Saint's hunger. In a secluded town, isolated from the rest of the world, and surrounded by ancient whispering woods, Maddy lived in a cottage that seemed to merge with the darkness beneath the pale light of the moon. The forest, thick with gnarled trees and shadows that reached like skeletal fingers, was a place few dared to enter. It was said that the forest itself was alive, watching, waiting, and that Maddy's cottage was an extension of its malevolent will. Her companions were not of the ordinary world. 4 cats, each more peculiar than the last, roamed the cottage like shadows, their eyes burning with an unnatural gleam. Ice Cream, the silver cat, moved with an ethereal grace, its fur shimmering like a frost-covered branch under moonlight. Nickel, with its obsidian coat, perched high in the windows, its glowing eyes reflecting the firelight like burning coals. Danielle, a sleek creature of pure darkness, prowled with silent, haunting movements, her gaze penetrating into the very soul of anyone who dared to meet it. Finally, there was Arrow, swift as the wind, its piercing eyes flashing with an intelligence that seemed beyond mortal comprehension. And then there was Saint, Maddy's hellhound, a creature of pure nightmare. Its fur was as black as the deepest abyss, and its eyes burned with an infernal fire that could pierce through the very fabric of reality. Saint's growls, low and mournful, reverberated through the cottage like distant thunder, sending chills down the spine of anyone within earshot. The beast seemed to be part of the shadows themselves, a manifestation of the darkness that surrounded Maddy. Whispers of Maddy's dark and mysterious life had spread through the village, carried on the wind like a warning. Tales were told in hushed tones about those who had vanished after wandering too close to her home, travelers who were never seen again, their fate sealed by the creatures that roamed the woods. The villagers spoke of eerie, synchronized movements of the cats under the moonlight, as if they were not animals at all, but sentient guardians with a purpose known only to them. One fateful night, a weary traveler, soaked from the relentless downpour, wandered too far down the winding paths and found himself at the edge of the dark woods. He stumbled upon the cottage, its silhouette haunting against the backdrop of a storm-tossed sky. Desperate for shelter from the tempest, he knocked on the weathered door, his hands trembling as the wind howled in the distance. The door creaked open, and there stood Maddy, her pale face lit by the flickering glow of a fire that danced wildly in the hearth. Her eyes glinted with an unsettling, predatory gleam, and her lips curved into a smile that did not reach her eyes. The cats moved around her feet, silent as shadows, their eyes fixed on the traveler with an intensity that made his skin crawl. Saint lay near the fire, its eyes glowing like twin infernos in the dark. "Come in." Maddy's voice was soft, but there was an edge to it, a chill that seemed to come from deep within the earth itself. The traveler, shaken by the strangeness of it all, stepped into the warmth of the cottage, the door closing behind him with a soft, final thud. As the storm raged outside, Maddy sat across from the traveler, her gaze unwavering. The firelight flickered, casting long, twisting shadows on the walls. The cats circled the man slowly, their movements unnerving in their precision, as though they were calculating something. Ice Cream, with its glimmering silver fur, brushed against his leg, sending a jolt of ice through his veins. Nickel, perched on the windowsill, stared at him with an unblinking gaze, its eyes reflecting the flames like pools of molten gold. Danielle's sleek form moved like a wisp of smoke, her eyes never leaving his face. Arrow, sharp and swift, flickered in and out of the shadows, as if it were not entirely real. Maddy began to speak, her voice like the wind itself, drifting with eerie grace through the room. She told tales of ancient rites and long-forgotten gods, her words sinking into the traveler's mind like poisoned seeds. He listened, captivated by the chilling beauty of her voice, but unease began to crawl up his spine. There was something wrong, something ancient and dark in the air. Her words were not just stories. They were an invitation into a world beyond his understanding, a place where the laws of nature did not apply. Saint, the hellhound, remained still by the fire, but its gaze was fixed on the traveler, burning with a hunger that was almost palpable. As the night deepened, the air in the room grew thick, oppressive, as if the very atmosphere was closing in on the man. When he finally tried to leave, his heart pounding with growing panic, the door would not open. He turned to face Maddy, but the smile on her face had twisted into something far darker, a reflection of a knowledge that no mortal should possess. "You cannot leave." Maddy's voice was no longer sweet, but a cold, whispering command that seemed to echo in the corners of the room. The cats gathered around him, their eyes glowing with an inhuman light, narrowing to slits as they closed in. Saint rose slowly, its massive form stretching and shifting with unnatural grace, its fiery eyes never leaving the traveler's face. The growls rumbled in its chest, growing louder and more menacing, blending with the sound of the storm outside. With every step the traveler took backward, the shadows seemed to draw closer, wrapping around him like cold, invisible hands. The space around him shrank until it felt as though he was standing in the very heart of darkness. The cats and Saint moved as one, a terrifying, unstoppable force. Ice Cream's claws raked across his legs, its silver fur flashing as it attacked. Nickel launched from the shadows, sinking its teeth into his shoulder, its eyes blazing with demonic fury. Danielle coiled around his ankles, her grip unyielding as she constricted like a vice. Arrow struck with lightning speed, its claws tearing through his flesh. Saint's jaws closed around his throat with a brutal final snap, and with a single, merciless motion, the traveler's life was snuffed out, his screams drowned by the howl of the wind. The legend of Maddy and her sinister companions, the 4 cats and the hellhound Saint, remained, whispered in terror by those who dared to speak of it. It was a warning, passed down through the generations. The tale of the traveler who wandered too close to the boundary between the mortal world and something far darker. A place where shadows were alive, and the price for trespassing was death.